Kansas football's training camp is well underway in Lawrence as Lance Leipold and the Jayhawks look to get prepared for the start of the 2022 football season, which is only a few weeks away. At this point, KU's held several practices, and on Monday, they held their first fully padded practice as the team takes another step forward in their preseason preparation. Now we've had the chance to talk to Lance Leipold twice and both of the coordinators. Here are a few of my takeaways from the first week of action. And it's hard not to start by looking back to last year. It's a lot less hectic this time around compared to 12 months ago when Lance Leipold and his staff were looking to instill the offense, instill the defense, and really establish the culture that they wanted to set for the program going forward. This time around, it's a lot less hectic. They're able to work on scheme, while not having to do big installs. And they're able to really work on creating depth and working with younger players to build continuity among the roster. And offensive coordinator Andy Koldenecki used the comparison of his own voice. He said that last year at this time, his voice was totally gone due to the yelling, trying to make sure that the standard was upheld throughout the course of a practice. And now he doesn't have to do that. The players know what's expected of them, and they each hold each other accountable. And so as a result, KU is able to spend this time in building continuity with the 20 new transfers that they have through the 4-year transfer portal or the junior college ranks. And so overall, the program is in a much healthier spot this time than it was this time last year. And as they try and put a more competitive product on the field, it's a positive start. And with that comes competition as well, which is something that Lance Leipold has talked a lot about in his first 12 months in Lawrence. He really wanted to focus on creating more competition up and down the roster so that players don't feel like they are entitled to a starting spot or entitled to a spot on the two deep. And there are a few positions up and down offense and defense where there's a lot of competition. I think defensively, you could start at linebacker. You bring in so many different transfers to go with your incumbent starters and Rich Miller and Gavin Potter, but you also bring in really talented players like Craig Young from Ohio State, Eric Gilliard from UCF. You even got some like Lorenzo McCaskill from Louisiana. And that's not even talking about some of the younger players in the program, someone like a Cornell Wheeler who transferred to KU last offseason from Michigan State. There's Tywin Berryhill, who had a really strong spring and has impressed some people in the program. And so overall, you're looking at the linebacker spot being a place of depth. And that can be the same case at defensive end, where Malcolm Lee and Jeremy Robinson are competing for a starting spot. You can even look at safety, where someone like Marvin Grant is expected to come in and start, but there's competition there. Jarrett Paul is a 1-year transfer from Eastern Michigan who's going to compete for starting time. Of course, OJ Burroughs is there too. And so on defense, there's competition all over the place. And it's the same thing on offense. Although we know who's going to start on the offensive line, we know who's going to start at quarterback, and even at running back, I think you look at the tight end room being a really big competition there. You've got someone like Mason Fairchild who played a lot of football and has started a lot of games, but there's younger players. Trevor Cardell is someone that has really turned heads in fall camp. Of course, there's Tavita Noah, who the staff brought in from the junior college ranks this offseason as well. And of course, there's wide receiver. You lose Kwame Lassiter over the offseason, and then all of a sudden you bring in someone like Douglas Emilion from Minnesota, and then you've got a really young wide receivers room as well that is really trying to emerge. And so up and down the roster, you can look at certain positions where there's more competition than there was this time last year. And overall, it's not hard to see how that could help a team. If players have to compete every day at practice, they're going to get better over time. And the staff has shown that they can develop. And so no better way to kind of cultivate that development than by creating competition. Moving to the offensive side of the ball, I think we're going to see KU get really creative. When we talked to offensive coordinator Andy Koldenecki, he talked a lot about wanting to create packages to put the best players on the field. There's an old saying, players, formations, plays, and it seems like that's the way that this staff is going to go about things. Of course, KU has a loaded running backs room with 3 former 4-star recruits, and it's arguably one of the deepest positions on the roster, if not the deepest and if not the best overall on the roster. Of course, Devin Neal is going to be the headliner, and Kai Thomas is going to play a lot as well. But then there's Sevion Morrison, who transferred from Nebraska. There's Daniel Highshaw, who produced early on in his KU career. And, of course, there's Torrey Laughlin as well, who brings versatility. And so you're going to see KU get creative with that running backs room and with that tight end room as well. And Andy Koldenecki talked about that, wanting to find different ways to get the best players on the team the ball. And so you'll see KU use different formations, different types of motion, things like that, to try and get the best players the ball in space where they have the chance to make a guy miss and go try and get as many yards as possible. Of course, transitioning to defense, we talked about it earlier, depth. Last year, KU was down to, as Brian Borland said, the bare bones at certain positions. And it's something that we covered on fog.net, but KU needed more Division I football players, and they did that this offseason, really emphasizing the defensive side of the ball in the transfer portal and junior college ranks. So now, instead of having a linebacker room, for example, where you trust Rich Miller and Gavin Potter, and they're having to play over 75% of your total snaps, you've got several other players that can step in throughout the course of a game so that when the fourth quarter comes, and if KU's in one of these one-score games, those defensive players can perform and not wear down over the course of a game. And so you look at defensive back as another position there where there's more depth. You bring in someone like Kalen Gervin from Michigan State. You bring in someone like Monte McGarry from Utah State. Of course, we already mentioned Marvin Grant and Jarrett Paul as well. So there's a lot more bodies up and down that defensive two deep to where you can rotate throughout the course of a game and feel pretty good about the players that are coming in and not worried if it's a young player that it's too early for or an old player that do they belong at this level. So overall, the roster seems to be in a much healthier spot. Will this lead to a 6-win season? Most likely not, but will it lead to a more competitive product for KU fans? I think they're taking a step in that direction.